Have you ever wondered why so many people, even after 60, still feel restless inside, despite having money, family, and comfort? Why do some souls never find peace, while others bloom like lotuses in late autumn? Why does one person sink into bitterness while another radiates serenity, even though both have walked through the same storms of aging, loss, and change? This is not a trivial question. It goes to the heart of what it means to grow older. We're told by society that retirement should be the reward, the golden age where the work is done, and we can finally relax. Yet look around. You'll find people who have everything they once dreamed of, a safe home, children who love them, a pension, maybe even good health. Still, they lie awake at night feeling empty. Still, they wonder, is this all there is? On the other hand, you'll meet elders who have faced hardship, illness, even the loss of their closest companions, and yet they carry themselves with dignity and peace. Their eyes are calm, their presence steady, their words gentle but strong. What makes the difference? Why do some wither in spirit, while others awaken? Welcome to Dharma Veins, a channel where we explore exactly these mysteries. Here, we weave together the timeless wisdom of Buddhism with the depth psychology of Carl Jung. Why Buddhism? Because it offers us teachings that cut straight to the root of suffering, reminding us of impermanence, compassion, and the possibility of liberation in every breath. Why Jung? Because he uncovered the patterns of the unconscious that shape our second half of life, the archetypes, the shadows, the hidden forces that either block us or lead us to individuation, the realization of our truest self. If you are in your 50s, 60s, or beyond, this space is for you. Our goal is not to lecture, but to accompany, to sit beside you, as if in the quiet of a temple garden, and ask the deeper questions. What robs us of peace? What restores it? How do we walk the final chapters of life not as a slow decline but as a flowering of wisdom and compassion? And that is what today's journey is all about. We're going to uncover 7 silent threats that quietly steal your peace after 60. These threats are not obvious. They don't come as dramatic crises or loud disasters. They creep in like shadows at dusk, small habits, old beliefs, hidden fears, that slowly suffocate joy. You may not even notice them until the days feel heavy and the nights feel long. But here is the promise. For every threat, there is also a path of wisdom. For every danger, a dharma practice that turns it into an opportunity. Neglecting the body can be transformed into honoring it as a temple. Living in the past can be softened by the practice of impermanence. Letting the mind rust can be reversed by curiosity and learning. Toxic relationships can be replaced with kalyana mitta, noble friendship. A life without purpose can be reignited with service. Fear of solitude can become the sanctuary of clarity. And the lie of too late can dissolve into the truth that every moment is a doorway to change. Throughout this exploration, we'll not only reflect on philosophy but also on real stories. You'll hear about figures like Nelson Mandela, who stepped out of prison at 71 and became a president. You'll learn from innovators like Nikola Tesla, who found creativity in solitude. You'll be inspired by ordinary elders, like a grandmother who began painting at 78 and became world famous as Grandma Moses. Or a man in Japan who, at 82, still walked miles every morning before bowing at the temple. These lives are not exceptions reserved for the chosen few. They are reminders that the human spirit, when guided by wisdom, never truly grows old. And here's the most important part. This is not a video you watch passively. Think of it as a mirror. As we move through the 7 threats, ask yourself, which of these are already stealing my peace? Which one whispers in my own heart? Because awareness is the first step toward freedom. When you name the silent thief, you weaken its grip. By the time we reach the end, you may find that what felt like the end of the road, retirement, aging, the slowing of the body, may actually be the beginning of your most powerful chapter. A chapter where you live not for applause, not for accumulation, but for the quiet joy of being fully alive, fully awake, and fully present. So, take a deep breath. Set aside distraction. Let's walk together into the heart of this teaching. Because peace after 60 is not an accident. It is a practice. And it begins by seeing clearly the silent threats that steal it away, and the Dharma wisdom that can restore it. 1. Threat 1. Neglecting the body. When we cross the threshold of 60, the body is no longer just flesh and bone, it becomes a sacred temple. The vessel that carries both wisdom and spirit. Ignoring it, treating it like an old machine that no longer deserves care, is not just negligence, it is a slow form of self-destruction. Buddhism has always taught the intimate link between body and mind. There is a simple but profound saying, the body is the boat. The mind is the sailor. Without a sturdy vessel, even the most skillful sailor cannot reach the other shore. In practical terms, that means if we allow the body to collapse, our mind, no matter how sharp or enlightened, will eventually falter. Think of world leaders and innovators who reached extraordinary influence, only to be reminded of the body's limits. Steve Jobs, despite his genius and vision, died at 56. In his final reflections, he admitted that all his wealth and power meant nothing without health. Nelson Mandela, on the other hand, endured 27 years in prison under harsh conditions but carefully preserved his body through discipline and exercise. That strength allowed him to emerge at 71 with enough vitality to lead South Africa through one of the most important transitions in modern history. Two contrasting examples, but both point to the same truth: the body is not optional, it is the foundation. Psychologist Carl Jung also offered a striking perspective. He saw the body as an unconscious partner. If we ignore it, if we repress its signals, the neglected energy doesn't vanish, it reemerges in shadow form, often through illness, depression, or chronic fatigue. Aches and pains are not random punishments, they are messages from the unconscious, asking us to realign. When we dismiss these whispers, they inevitably turn into screams. There's also inspiration in the lives of ordinary people. I once read about an 82-year-old man in Japan who walked 5 kilometers every morning before attending temple services. He wasn't a marathon runner, nor did he chase vanity goals. He simply respected the vessel that carried him through life. His vitality became a form of Dharma practice, a living example that caring for the body is itself a spiritual act. So, what can we do after 60? The solution doesn't lie in extremes. You don't need to climb mountains or push yourself into punishing routines. Instead, focus on sustainable rituals that honor your body as a temple. Daily walking, even 20 to 30 minutes a day, keeps circulation alive and joints mobile. Gentle yoga or stretching. These practices don't just enhance flexibility, they teach awareness of breath and posture. Mindful eating. Try seasonal vegetables, lighter meals, and even periodic vegetarian days. This is both a Buddhist practice of compassion and a biological gift to your organs. Meditative movement. Walking meditation in the garden or slow tai chi in the park strengthens not just muscles but presence. Rest and sleep. Quality sleep is underestimated. It is during rest that both body and mind regenerate. Ultimately, neglecting the body is neglecting the mind. A strong body supports a resilient spirit, while a decaying body drags the spirit into decline. The real question we must ask ourselves is, in 5 years, will we look back with gratitude for having cared for this vessel, or regret for letting it collapse? 2. Threat 2. Living in the past. Regret is one of the most invisible prisons a human being can create. There are no chains, no iron bars, yet countless people after 60 remain locked inside. They replay old mistakes, lost chances, or broken relationships as if holding onto them could somehow rewrite history. But the truth is brutal: the past no longer exists. Holding onto it is like trying to clutch smoke, it only exhausts you while giving nothing back. Buddhism explains this with the teaching of anicca, impermanence. Every moment rises and falls. Every breath begins and ends. The past is not a place we can live in, it's only a memory. And clinging to it guarantees suffering. To grieve the past endlessly is to abandon the living moment that still carries possibilities. Consider the story of a man who lost his wife in his 60s. For 10 years, he remained in mourning, refusing to move forward, convinced that joy was no longer possible. Life shrank around him. Only when he began practicing mindful breathing meditation did he realize something profound. While his wife was gone, he still had children and grandchildren waiting for his presence. By loosening his grip on the past, he discovered love had not disappeared, it had simply shifted into new forms. Carl Jung would say that unprocessed experiences from the past turn into complexes, psychological knots that pull us back whenever we try to step forward. These complexes act like gravity. They keep us orbiting around old pain, unable to launch into new chapters of life. A person who constantly says, "I should have," or "if only I had," is unknowingly feeding the complex instead of dissolving it. Even the most powerful figures in history faced this challenge. Take Winston Churchill. After losing the 1929 election, many assumed his political career was over. For nearly a decade, he was haunted by failure. But instead of staying chained to that narrative, he eventually reframed it as preparation. When World War II erupted, those so-called wasted years of reflection became the crucible that forged his resilience as Britain's wartime leader. Had he remained a prisoner of regret, history might have taken a very different turn. So how can we, in our everyday lives, free ourselves from the trap of the past? The practices are both symbolic and practical. Journaling. Write down regrets beginning with the phrase, "I release." Externalizing them on paper makes them less heavy. Ritual release. Write a memory you can't let go of. Fold the paper and burn it. As the smoke rises, remind yourself, "I no longer live there." Meditation. Practice breath awareness. Each exhale is a mini death of the past. Each inhale is the birth of a new chance. Forgiveness. If your regret involves another person, even if they are gone, speak forgiveness aloud. It lightens the invisible chain. Living in the past steals more than time, it steals presence. Joy, and the chance to contribute. After 60, the future may feel shorter, but that makes the present infinitely more valuable. The choice is stark: remain a prisoner of yesterday, or step into the freedom of today. 3. Fret 3. Letting the mind rust. The mind, much like a muscle, weakens without exercise. After 60, this danger becomes sharper because routine and comfort can quietly transform into decay. Days of television, repetitive meals, and predictable habits may feel safe, but they slowly erode curiosity and clarity. What begins as leisure often ends as surrender. Buddhism reminds us of right thought, one part of the Noble Eightfold Path. It is not enough to simply avoid wrong thinking, we must actively cultivate a mind that questions, contemplates, and grows. A stagnant mind cannot generate compassion or wisdom. Meditation itself is training, not just to calm the mind but to sharpen awareness. Just as the body requires movement to stay alive, the mind requires reflection and study to remain luminous. Examples abound of people who refused to let their minds rust. Consider Warren Buffett. Well into his 90s, he reads hundreds of pages daily. He calls knowledge compound interest for the mind, and his clarity in decision-making comes not from youth but from constant intellectual training. Contrast that with leaders who withdrew too early from curiosity. History is filled with rulers who lost touch with reality because they stopped listening, stopped learning, and surrounded themselves with echoes of their own past persona. Carl Jung warned about this very danger. He argued that when we stop learning and questioning, we become trapped inside our old persona, the mask we wore in earlier stages of life. Instead of continuing toward the wholeness of the self, we become caricatures of our former selves. This is why some people in later life seem rigid, inflexible, and bitter. They are not growing, they are rusting. Even at the ordinary level, the examples are powerful. A 75-year-old woman who began studying Pali to recite sutras not only exercised her memory but also deepened her spiritual life. Another, at 70, took up the piano. She wasn't preparing for a concert hall, she was learning how to breathe through music, how to feel presence in each note. Both women show that mental vitality is not about career achievement, it is about refusing to surrender to decline. Practical steps can be surprisingly simple. Read daily. Even a single page of philosophy, history, or poetry feeds the mind with new patterns. Learn something unfamiliar. Try painting, a foreign language, or basic coding. Stretching into discomfort keeps the brain alive. Meditation with inquiry. Not just calming the mind, but reflecting on questions. Who am I? What truly matters? Social debates and puzzles. Engage in conversations that challenge you. Sharpening thought with others prevents dullness. Aging does not require mental rust. The body may slow down, But the mind can remain radiant if we choose to keep it moving. Each new skill, each page turned, each moment of mindful reflection is an act of resistance against decay. Growth is always available, at 60, at 80, even at 100. The only real danger is believing the mind no longer needs to be exercised. 4. Threat 4. Toxic people. At this stage of life, every hour of peace is priceless. Yet many people over 60 still carry the burden of toxic relationships, friends who gossip, relatives who drain energy, or companions who wrap every conversation in bitterness. Keeping these people close is like drinking poisoned water every day and wondering why your spirit feels sick. Buddhism gives us a powerful lens here, Kalyana Mitta, the good and noble friend. A true friend is not just someone who shares your table, but someone who lifts you on the path of wisdom. The Buddha himself said that noble friendship is the whole of the holy life. If this is true, then the opposite also holds. Keeping company with the wrong people is the fastest way to lose your peace. Carl Jung's psychology deepens this insight. He described how toxic individuals often engage in shadow projection, unloading their own fears, anger, or insecurities onto others. Spend long enough around them, and you begin to confuse their voice with your own. Their bitterness seeps into your thoughts until you can't distinguish between your truth and their poison. This isn't just unpleasant, it is spiritually dangerous. History offers examples of how discernment in relationships shapes destiny. Oprah Winfrey openly credits her success not only to her own drive but to her refusal to stay tied to people who constantly drained her. She has said that learning to say no was the turning point in her life. Contrast that with leaders who surrounded themselves with sycophants and toxic voices. Think of dictators whose downfall was accelerated by inner circles that thrived on manipulation and negativity. The company you keep can elevate you to greatness or drag you into ruin. The same lesson plays out in ordinary lives. A 68-year-old woman once described how she finally cut ties with a group of friends who spent every afternoon gossiping and complaining. For years, she tolerated them out of habit, but every visit left her exhausted. When she stepped away, her health improved, her sleep became peaceful, and she felt light for the first time in decades. Nothing about her body had changed, only her circle. Practical wisdom here is simple but demanding. Identify the drainers. Notice who leaves you heavy after an encounter. Set boundaries. Saying, "I don't want to talk about this," or "I need space," is an act of self-respect, not cruelty. Choose quality over quantity. One true friend is worth more than 10 shallow companions. Find uplifting communities, Buddhist sanghas, meditation groups, or even book clubs with positive energy provide healthier soil for your spirit. After 60, time is too sacred to be spent absorbing poison. Protect your circle as you would protect your home. Toxic people are not just a nuisance, they are thieves of energy, clarity, and peace. Walking away is not rejection, it is wisdom. 5. Threat 5. Living without purpose. One of the most dangerous illusions people face after 60 is the belief that retirement equals the end of meaningful work. Society often sells us the idea that our later years should be nothing but leisure, sitting in a comfortable chair, traveling occasionally, and waiting for time to run out. While rest is important, reducing life to comfort alone can strip it of meaning. Without purpose, days blur into weeks, and weeks into years. The body may remain alive, but the soul begins to wither. Buddhism speaks directly to this. In the Bodhisattva vow, the promise is clear: as long as we are alive, we continue to serve others and to cultivate wisdom. There is no retirement from compassion. The very act of breathing is a reminder that life is still asking something from us. This vow turns every stage of life into an opportunity for contribution. Carl Jung framed it in another way. He saw old age not as decline, but as the afternoon of life, a critical stage of individuation. In youth, we build careers, families, and identities, our persona. But later life calls us to move beyond those masks, to integrate the unconscious, and to meet the self. This individuation is not passive. It demands reflection, new practices, and often new projects. Without purpose, this growth is stunted, and old age becomes stagnation rather than transformation. Look at the lives of powerful figures who refused to surrender their sense of purpose. Nelson Mandela emerged from prison at 71 and became the President of South Africa, guiding the nation through reconciliation. Winston Churchill returned to lead Britain as Prime Minister at the age of 65 during the darkest years of World War II. These men did not treat their later years as an exit from responsibility, they saw them as the moment their true purpose crystallized. On a smaller but equally profound scale, consider the story of a 70-year-old woman in India who realized many women in her village remained illiterate. Rather than resign herself to old age, she opened a small school in her home. Teaching basic reading and writing gave her new joy and a renewed sense of usefulness. Her neighbors didn't just learn letters, they witnessed how purpose can turn aging into vitality. Purpose does not have to mean global leadership or grand achievements. For some, it is mentoring a younger colleague. For others, it may be tending a community garden, writing down life lessons for grandchildren, or volunteering at a local shelter. Purpose can be as simple as waking each morning with the question, "Who can I help today?" or "What beauty can I create?" However small, the danger of living without purpose is that it empties the soul of direction. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "A life without purpose is like a ship adrift at sea, carried by every wave, without a sense of mission." We become vulnerable to boredom, depression, and even physical decline. Studies in modern psychology confirm this. Older adults who maintain a sense of purpose live longer, recover faster from illness, and report higher levels of happiness. Purpose literally sustains life. So how can we reclaim or discover purpose after 60? The practices can be both simple and transformative. Write a life purpose statement. Reflect on your values and experiences. Summarize in a few sentences what you believe your role is now. For example, I am here to share wisdom with my family and community, to practice compassion, and to live each day with gratitude. Engage in acts of service. Volunteer work, mentoring, or even small daily acts of kindness can reconnect you to a mission greater than yourself. Keep learning. Purpose thrives when the mind is engaged. Take a class, learn a new skill, or study spiritual teachings. Each new lesson renews your sense of becoming. Reconnect with creativity. Writing, painting, gardening, or music, these are not hobbies, but channels through which purpose flows into the world. Align with community. Find groups or sanghas where service and growth are valued. Being part of a collective mission magnifies individual purpose. History repeatedly shows us that some of the greatest contributions happen in the final chapters of life. Colonel Harland Sanders founded KFC at 65 after countless failures. Grandma Moses began painting in her late 70s and became world-renowned. These stories are not exceptions, they are reminders that purpose has no expiration date. To live without purpose after 60 is to silently accept spiritual death before physical death arrives. To live with purpose, however, is to transform each day into a meaningful act. No matter how small, it is to say, I am still here, and my life still matters. 6. Threat 6. Fear of solitude. For many people past 60, one of the deepest fears is solitude. The house feels quieter, friends move away, loved ones pass on, and silence begins to fill the spaces once crowded with conversation. Too often, this silence is mistaken for emptiness. But solitude is not the enemy. It can be the very ground where strength, clarity, and renewal are born. Buddhism has always honored solitude through the practice of tinku, or retreat. Far from being an escape, solitude is a chance to hear the subtle voice of the mind and heart without the constant interference of the outside world. In the stillness of meditation, we discover that peace is not given by others, it arises from within. The Buddha himself reached enlightenment not in the crowd but under the Bodhi tree, alone with his breath, his doubts, and his determination. Carl Jung echoed this truth from a psychological perspective. He wrote that, individuation requires solitude. To truly integrate the self, one must sometimes step away from the collective noise, detach from roles and masks, and listen deeply to the inner voice. Without solitude, we risk living as a reflection of others rather than as our authentic self. History and science both give us striking examples. Nikola Tesla often spent long stretches in solitude, walking for hours and imagining inventions that would later transform the world. Far from weakening him, These solitary moments sharpened his creativity. On a different level, powerful leaders like Abraham Lincoln frequently withdrew into silence to wrestle with decisions that shaped nations. Their ability to face solitude allowed them to return to the world with clarity and resolve. Even in spiritual traditions, solitude is seen not as punishment but as sanctuary. Monks retreat to caves or mountains not to run away from life but to see life more clearly. A Zen master once said, "If you cannot sit with yourself, you will never truly sit with another." Learning to be at peace in solitude is the foundation of being at peace in relationships. Practical steps to transform loneliness into solitude are simple, yet profound. Silent meditation. Spend 10 minutes each day in stillness, focusing on breath. Nature walks. Trade human chatter for the sound of wind, trees, and birds. Nature restores balance without saying a word. Journaling. Writing down your thoughts externalizes inner noise and turns confusion into clarity. Mindful presence. Practice enjoying your own company, tea alone. A quiet meal, or an evening with music can become sacred rituals. The fear of solitude steals peace because it convinces us we are incomplete without constant company. But when we embrace it, solitude becomes a mirror, showing us not what we lack, but what we truly are. Far from being empty, it is a space where the soul learns to breathe freely again. 7. Fret 7. Believing it's too late to change. Perhaps the most dangerous lie people tell themselves after 60 is, "It's too late to start again, too late to learn something new, too late to become the person they always wanted to be." This belief doesn't just steal the future, it poisons the present moment. Buddhism directly challenges this illusion. Every sat-na, every instant, is an opportunity to awaken. The Dharma teaches that transformation is not measured in years but in presence. One mindful breath can shift a lifetime of suffering. To say, "It's too late," is to deny the reality of impermanence. Where everything, including our patterns, habits, and choices, can change right now. Carl Jung offered a similar perspective. He wrote, "The afternoon of life must have its own meaning. What served us in youth, ambition, competition, image, may no longer guide us in later years. But that doesn't mean the journey is over. Instead, it means the second half of life demands a new orientation, growth toward wholeness, integration, and deeper meaning. Change is not optional, it is the very task of aging." The lives of famous figures reinforce this truth. Nelson Mandela walked out of prison at 71. After 27 years behind bars, the world might have expected him to retire quietly. Instead, he became the president of South Africa and a global symbol of reconciliation. Ronald Reagan entered the White House at 69 and reshaped international politics. Even beyond politics, artists like Grandma Moses began painting in her late 70s and eventually became an icon of American folk art. None of them accepted the lie of too late. Ordinary people prove this as well. I once read about a woman who, at 80, decided to learn the violin, not to perform, but to experience music with her own hands. Within a year, she could play simple melodies that brought joy to her grandchildren. The goal wasn't mastery, it was aliveness. Every bow stroke was a declaration that life was still unfolding. The path forward is simpler than we think. Change one habit. Start walking in the morning. Meditate before bed. Or reduce one unhealthy food. Small shifts accumulate into transformation. Begin learning. Take a class online. Study a language. Or explore a subject you once ignored. The act of learning itself is rejuvenation. Serve others. Volunteer. Mentor. Or share your wisdom. Service gives immediate purpose and proves that your presence still matters. Practice saying yes. Accept invitations. Try new experiences. Explore curiosity. Yes is the antidote to too late. The tragedy of life is not aging. The tragedy is aging while believing the story is already finished. As long as your heart beats and your lungs breathe, the story continues, and you still hold the pen. Too late is a myth. The truth is that every moment is a doorway. The only question is whether you will step through it. We have walked through 7 silent threats that often rise after 60. Yet each of them, if seen clearly, is not just a danger, it is an invitation. Neglecting the body can become honoring the temple that carries the soul. Living in the past can turn into releasing regret through the wisdom of impermanence. Letting the mind rust can transform into curiosity and growth. Toxic relationships can be replaced with noble friendships that uplift the spirit. Living without purpose can ignite new service and meaning. Fear of solitude can reveal the sanctuary of the inner self. And believing it's too late can dissolve into the truth that every moment holds the power of renewal. What looked like threats are, in fact, opportunities. Opportunities to grow spiritually, to reclaim peace, and to deepen compassion. Aging does not mean decline, it means unfolding. It means the chance to turn the autumn of life into a harvest of wisdom. The Buddha once said, "The wise do not grieve for the past, nor dream about the future, but live fully in the present." This teaching is not abstract. It is the key to freedom at any age. If we anchor ourselves in the present moment, then every breath, every step, every act of kindness becomes meaningful. Peace is not found in wishing for youth again, nor in fearing tomorrow. It is found here, in this very moment. And before we part, let me offer a prayer for all beings. May all who are listening, especially those after 60, find inner peace, courage, and a renewed sense of purpose. May your bodies be strong enough to carry you. May your minds remain curious and alive. And may your hearts rest in compassion. May those suffering in times of disaster, war, or uncertainty find relief and protection. And may all beings, without exception, walk toward wisdom and freedom.